There's a group of people on every ski mountain you barely notice on the best days and never forget on the worst. Ski patrollers work in the background before the lifts spin and long after they stop in storms, cold, and high stake moments that most skiers hope they never experience. If they're doing their job right, you probably don't think about them at all. But behind the red jackets is serious training, responsibility, and a quiet professionalism that keeps ski areas running and people safe in ways guests rarely see. My guest today is Stephanie Cox, CEO of the National Ski Patrol. She leads the organization responsible for training and credentialing more than 30,000 ski patrollers across the country. In this conversation, we talk about what Ski Patrol really does, how the role has evolved, why patrollers have been in the news recently, who becomes a ski patroller, and why so many stay for decades. Here's my conversation with Stephanie Cox. Stephanie, welcome to Fresh Corduroy.
Hi, Craig. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Before we talk all things National Ski Patrol, I want to hear about Stephanie's skiing origin story. Where and when did you get started skiing?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. So my home mountain was Wintergreen. And I started skiing in middle school in Wintergreen. My parents were not skiers, but they thought it was important for the three of us girls, I have two sisters, to spend some time skiing. And so they would just take us up on the weekends and drop us off in our t-shirts and jeans, no lessons, mind you. And we would just hang out there for the day and try to teach ourselves how to ski. And gosh, I still remember Eagle Swoop, the big blue that we used to always go down. And that was my very first memory also of ski patrol. And at that time, it was do anything you can to avoid ski patrol. But yeah, so grew up and skiing in Virginia, in the mountains of Virginia. And ironically, I went back in December because my folks still live back there in Charlottesville, and it was snowing the whole time. It was beautiful. And then I get on a plane and I come back to Colorado and it's desert, right? It's just desert. So they probably had more snow than we've had this winter.
It wouldn't surprise me. I hear that Colorado is having a pretty rough time of it this winter.
Yes.
And here in the east where I'm located, we've got a couple of feet of snow on the ground, locally. People complaining here in New York City, where I am at the moment. So,
New York. Okay.
yeah,
All right. Well, you're lucky because you guys have more ski areas in the U.S. than anybody else in New York. So
I know it's one of those trivial questions in terms of the state with the most ski areas is New York State, which is somewhat surprising.
Yeah, I think to your average listener, I think they would be really surprised to learn that.
Yeah. There are, as you might imagine, there are quite a few that I've never been to and don't have plans to go to, but there are plenty of them, which is nice.
Yeah.
So let's you mentioned the ski patrol as being I guess forced to stay away from when you're a child. Let's talk about what the ski patrollers. As I was thinking about this episode, ski patrollers are oftentimes in the background, right? They're,
Yes.
hopefully you don't cross paths with them, either because you don't want your lift ticket pulled or because you don't want to be taken down the hill in a toboggan. What is, let's talk about, what ski patrollers do day in and day out, in terms of their mission and the mission of the National Ski Patrol organization that you lead.
Well, let's go back to that childhood memory that
Sure.
I have of ski patrol, right? And we've evolved quite a ways since then, and I won't totally date myself, but a couple decades at least. and or more. And back then, I think, ski patrol was really more about, being the speed police, pulling passes. But today you'll notice like ski patrol actually is not something to avoid, right? They're your community, right? They're your community partners. They're somebody who will give you a Band-Aid or put you to the bathroom, or, right, rescue you, right, and put you in a toboggan and get you down safely. And so we've really evolved, I think, to somewhat of that softer side, more community side of ski patrol. And I think that's really important because they also don't just take off their red jackets at the end of the day and just like leave their mountains and, stop being first responders and members of your community, because they are there for you in your community. And we spend a lot of time on that, actually, and training ski patrol, not just to, all the credentialing that they go through and all the medical training, right? But also, how do you show up for people on the mountain? How do you be a good steward of the mountain and of the community that's there?
And so what does that look like in practical terms with respect to what does a ski patroller do today? And I imagine that may differ based on the ski area that they're located at, but in general, it's not just accident response.
Right. Well, I mean, for the main part, it is.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of people don't know that ski patrollers go through at least, right, 120, 140 hours of intense medical training to start off, right? So if you become a candidate, you have to take what's called our Outdoor Emergency Care Course, or OEC, right? And that is the fundamental credential that patrollers have when they leave National Ski Patrol. And it's really very much focused on that essential medical training, right? And then when they're on the mountains, they take that medical training plus their toboggan training. So they have on-hill toboggan training. Like, you can't just pick up a toboggan and ski down. There's a lot of technique to doing that. So then they have their toboggan training. And then they also have sort of the rescue part of it, right? How do you actually get somebody, right, from a difficult slope side, right, or a very bad situation, and how do you get them into the toboggan, and how do you get them down safely, down to the aid room, or at that point down to an ambulance so they can get the care in a hospital that they need.
That's interesting. There's been obviously in Europe at the moment, but some high-profile accidents around the Olympics and other World Cup ski events, where I don't know if they're called ski patrol in Europe, but the emergency personnel are rescuing athletes off the side of the hill, oftentimes with a helicopter and an airlift, as opposed to a toboggan. But imagine very similar training and perhaps, though not with as usually high-profile patients.
As we just saw, yes. Well, so it's so funny because, Craig, I'm like zooming in on that, right? So
Yes.
I watched, unfortunately, Lindsey Vonn crash, and then I watched, right, to see the response. It was really important to me to watch that response of what happened. And you will see the rescuers ski down, and they had a toboggan. They had to stabilize her, right? Put her on her backboard so that the helicopter could actually lift her out and get her to a hospital. And so, yeah, we were all just sort of zooming in and giving our best to Lindsey, but also sort of watching what that emergency response looked like.
And what does, so we're talking about the ultimate consequence of an accident happening. Where does ski patrol fit in the realm of preventing accidents? You mentioned obviously maybe decades ago it was around speed control, perhaps less so today, and mountains are taking on that responsibility. But I think of ski patrol as also potentially mitigating avalanche danger when Colorado has snow, or obviously checking trails and determining which trails can be opened and which can't be because of snow conditions and the like. What is the role of ski patrol in the accident mitigation side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. Something to be really aware of, National Ski Patrol, we are that education and credentialing body for over 32,000 patrollers and 620 patrols and host units. So we are a national, international organization, right? But when patrollers actually get on the mountain, they become agents of that mountain, right? And so they become, part of those operations. So when we talk about mitigation, that's really a function of sort of the mountain operations in conjunction with those very highly trained patrollers, right? We have, I think, over 2,000 patrollers really active in avalanche mitigation and training. And in fact, National Ski Patrol, we just helped to sponsor the National Avalanche School this year. It happens every other year. We had over 300 avalanche professionals come to and through that school for training, which was amazing. And so those patrollers really are some of the elite, right? The highly trained ones. For the most part, at sort of the basic level 1 or awareness, we try to teach people how to avoid those scenarios, right? And that's really important. We do training for patrollers specific to avalanche, and we're the only body that really trains patrollers in avalanche awareness, avalanche mitigation, and training. But we want to first make sure that everybody knows how to avoid avalanche scenarios in the first place. And then as you level up, of course, you learn how to mitigate once you're operating on those mountains.
Understood. And so where does, you talked about how they become agents of the local mountain. So what is the role and mission of the National Ski Patrol, i.e. the organization and governing body, for lack of a better term, that you lead versus the independent, or maybe they're not independent, but the individual ski patrol groups at a particular mountain? There's obviously a distinction that needs to be made between the national body and then each individual patrol unit at a given mountain.
Yeah, so one thing I want to go back to what you had asked earlier, sort of the role of Ski Patrol and how it has expanded a bit, because Ski Patrol is also now very much involved in sort of that risk management, right? Helping to keep the mountains safe and communities, and also in sort of the risk management scope. And that's really increasing. And so our role is increasing, right? So we just created sort of an online outdoor risk management course for all of our patrollers to go through, right? And we also just created a leadership course for many of our patrollers to go through, because they're taking on many more responsibilities as leaders these days. As ski areas expand, as climate changes, as operations change, we need to make sure that patrollers are trained and ready for all those eventualities. So in terms of our role, that is our role, right? To work with our mountain partners to be responsive to their needs, and then to make sure that we have the courses, the education, the training, the additional credentials that patrollers can engage in order to respond to those the needs on the mountain.
And where do you, is there a line in terms of what should be expected of a patroller versus some other function? You said you're being responsive to the resorts around what the needs are. I'm going to say something far flung, right? If you wanted a patroller to teach skiing and snowboarding, that's probably outside of the job description, and it's sort of, they can't do both, right? They can't teach a lesson simultaneously while, saving somebody from an accident. Is there a give and take, if you will, around what is the role of the ski patroller, should be the role of the ski patroller versus what resorts might be asking of them?
Well, that's up to the resorts, right?
Okay.
So for us, we know exactly what they need to be trained in as a baseline, and then we know we offer a way to level up that training. And then when they get to the ski areas or the recreational areas, and the recreational areas say, hey, we'd like you to do XYZ, that's really up to them. However, I will say that the role is very similar across the board, right? There's not a whole lot of drift. There's absolutely a lot of boundaries and a lot of, let's just say, yeah, I would say boundaries onto what a patroller can and can't do at a ski area.
Got it. And I'm sure you could sense where I might be going with that question. Look, ski patrol have been in the headlines a lot over the last 2 years, give or take, in terms of labor disputes, much more so than in past years. Where does the National Ski Patrol fit into that headline grabbing, news, if you will?
Yeah, well, so I will say this right off the bat. We are deeply empathetic to those patrollers who are paid as career patrollers, as paid professionals, and their needs. And at the same time, because we are responsive to the needs of patrollers and the needs of ski areas at the same time, we tend to stay in our lane, right? And our lane is to educate and to credential. And we don't want to muddy the waters and get involved in any employer-employee relationship. And that's really important for people to understand. That is not our purview. We are not an advocacy organization, right? We are a training and credentialing organization. And if you are a paid patroller, then you are an employee of that ski area. And those dynamics need to be worked out in that realm, right? So it doesn't mean that we're deaf. Certainly not. I read everything that's happening, even all the comments on social media. And the good news is the community is very supportive of ski patrol, right? They love their ski patrollers. And often these things get worked out. So hopefully to everybody's benefit. And yeah, we're seeing it more. We've got a generation coming up too that I call the activist generation, right? I mean, they very much are activating for what they want, right? They're not afraid to ask for it. They're not afraid to go out there and talk to people about it. And, we want to see a whole new generation of patrollers come into National Ski Patrol. We do want people to see it as a career, right? The majority of our patrollers are volunteers. So we only have in National Ski Patrol about 5,000 full-time paid professionals.
And so, speaking of those demographics, where's the line? Where are their paid patrollers versus the volunteer positions? Like, and again, I'm sure it's solely dependent on the ski area and what they're trying to recruit and retain. But where do you see where is the dividing line between a paid patroller and a volunteer position? Like, how does that come about? And, who are those personnel in both categories?
Mm-hmm. This is kind of like inside baseball, right?
Yep.
So, but something most people don't even understand, right? The majority of patrollers are not paid, right? They're volunteers. Let me just speak to the volunteer side of things. So, National Ski Patrol was formed in 1938. And it was formed by volunteers. And all of our education has been created by volunteers. And we were so important to the national infrastructure after World War II that Congress gave us a congressional charter in 1980 to said, your work as National Ski Patrol is so important to the communities of the United States that we're going to give you this special charter, which is beautiful, right? And it was all based on volunteerism. Now, the world changed a little bit since then. And for the most part, west of the Mississippi, at some of the large or extra large ski areas, you will see that they hire patrollers because they want them there 5-6 days a week or in year-round operations, right? So they've expanded their operations, and so you can't get enough volunteer time, right, to fill that need for a volunteer to be out there 5-6 days a week year-round. So they found the need to pay, right, and to create that sort of career track. However, a lot of our volunteers still are in the Midwest, in the East, and in the South. And they have this incredible wisdom because a lot of them are already ER doctors and nurses, right? They're lawyers, they're engineers. They come a lot from the medical fields, and they're the ones writing the curriculum, right? That our paid professionals actually go out and use. So it takes both. It's a beautiful mix of sort of the professional wisdom and time that volunteers give, and then the paid professionals that go out and do a lot of the work year round and, 5-6 days a week.
So a couple of things in there. One is you talked about in the paid ranks, the large mountains want to have enough staff on hand in order to support the operations. And on the volunteer side, presumably there's a similar calculus, which is I need X number of patrollers for a certain size of skier population or number of visits. Is that, I don't know if that's part of the curriculum. Like, how do you look at it from a staffing perspective in terms of how many patrollers per skiers do you need?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll go back to that's determined by the ski area management, right? They look at their acreage, they look at their terrain, they figure out that calculus. But I will tell you that, all of our local patrols are the ones. So if a ski area comes and says, hey, we need 12 more patrollers, that patrol really goes out and recruits, they're like, we got it. We'll start recruiting and training, which is wonderful. So, but at the same time, we may have lists or rosters that are quite large, right? You take, let's say, Perfect North in the Midwest has a roster of 200 volunteers, right? Now, those volunteers may dedicate one day a month, or one day a week, or, and so they have to have larger rosters in order to supplement all those days and to make up for all those days.
Yeah, understood. I just think of it as, I guess, and you brought into the equation the size of the area, right? So it's not just number of skiers, but even if you had 2 people at Vail Mountain, you'd probably need a very sizable ski patrol to make sure that there aren't other people on other slopes that you're not aware of, kind of a thing. So acreage, I see.
Yeah, and ski areas, they are expanding their terrain, right, constantly. And so that puts pressure on the need for more patrollers at a ski area. And because the public, they're like, we want new terrain, we want more terrain, and they want to, be responsive to the public. And so they're expanding terrain, which means we have more folks that we need to train.
Do you aggregate data across the different patrol units? I think of things like response time, or again, you could have that ratio of number of patrollers to skier visits, or whatever the other metrics that you could aggregate across the entire population, so that what national averages are, regional averages, et cetera. What are the, if you do collect data, what do you collect, and what are the tidbits that might be interesting?
Well, I'm going to bore you because I'm going to tell you that the data that we do collect is all about education and training. The data that the mountains collect, that National Ski Areas Association, for example, I saw you had Mike on recently, they collect a lot of data. And they're the people that I would always direct you to say, if you really want some good data, go there, because that's the operational data, right?
Okay.
So while our patrollers might have a hand in collecting some of that data, the ski areas own that data and use that data. So that's why I'm not going to give you a really exciting response. I can tell you how many people have taken the OEC refresher, and that's just going to be boring. So circle back to NSAA. They just came out with a really interesting, I think, economic study too that might be of interest.
Yeah, I will do that. What about who becomes? So you talked about, again, I don't know if it's a dichotomy, but the difference between the paid patroller ranks and the volunteer ranks, And so who are the ski patrols? You started to talk about it. They're doctors, nurses, engineers, other people who are interested. Is that the standard across the board? Because I think of my local ski area, they're exactly as I just described. The people who have been in other professions for a long time and wish to contribute and volunteer and give back. When I go out west, I think of them as 20-something-year-olds who are perhaps some of the best skiers on the mountain, enjoying their time there. A different demographic altogether. Is there a prototypical ski patroller, or is it really run the gamut?
It really runs the gamut. We're kind of a microcosm of the entire United States, right? And I would say this, for the general population who's going skiing and enjoying those mountains, they won't know the difference if somebody's a volunteer or if somebody's being paid, right? That's just an allocation that we have inside our own system, right, to track that. But for a guest, there's no visible difference in any way whatsoever, and there shouldn't be. Now, our average age is getting up there, actually. The majority are men. So we have about 23, creeping up to 24% women. So we definitely have work to do on that side, and we're doing a number of things to get that number up. But, the average age is over the age of 50, and that's paid in volunteer, right, in our ranks. And let me also just be really clear, they're trained equally. So the young 20-something-year-old, right, that is a really excellent hotshot skier, is trained in just the same way as a volunteer is on your ski area, right? And so there's no difference there in their training and in their credentialing. So that's really fundamental, right, to how the system works. And it is the same, the credential is the same across the United States, right? And so there's a lot of transferability within the U.S. among ski areas for that credential. Now, obviously, the terrain's different. So some people might grow up skiing on a mountain, like Mary Jane, Winter Park, right? And some may on a hill in Michigan, right? But they will all still have the same toboggan training, the same ski test, the same refresher. Every patroller has to refresh. A lot of people don't know this. A year, right? So we make sure that they're current every single year going into the ski season. And so we're really proud of that fact. We've always done it like that. So the level of training, again, is sort of what equalizes everybody.
Speaking of training and refreshing, how does that work? Are there trainers / examiners who travel to different mountains and perform those examinations, or is there someone designated within a particular patrol unit as the examiner or the refresher, course teacher? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Both, actually.
Okay.
So we have, I think, over 6,000 instructors in our ranks. And National Ski Patrol has an incredible system of quality assurance in our instructing and training. So we have instructors, we have instructor trainers, and we have instructors of record. So we have this tiered system to make sure that the same training is applied wherever you are, and that it's checked, right? And that somebody's watching that instructor instruct.
Right.
And so, yes, we will have trainers at the local level, at the patrol level. We have trainers in our region level, trainers at our division level, and trainers at the national level. So we're kind of, we're sort of mirror the military in a way, because we have this, very structured system that goes all the way down, like from, national to division to region to section to patrol. And that levels up, but for us, that's because we're so concerned about quality assurance.
Funny you should say that. I have seen West Point cadets out
Huh?
training as
Yep.
patrollers
Well,
before. So,
yeah.
you actually have military people in your
Oh,
ranks.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you know this, that National Ski Patrol, Minnie Dole helped found the 10th Mountain Division. And in fact, in a week, the 10th Mountain is coming out to Colorado, and they're getting a level 1 avalanche course from National Ski Patrol. So we're training about, I think, 30 soldiers.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, you also talked about the demographics and the age creeping up a little bit. This may be more of a local mountain issue or responsibility, but does NSP have a role to play in terms of recruiting and um, at least making call it the profession or the volunteerism more attractive to younger people? Because I think we'll all have a problem if the age continues to go up in terms of the ranks of the ski patrol around the nation.
Yeah, we at the national level have a responsibility to make the organization and to make the mission as interesting, modern, and fresh and attractive as possible, right, for the next generation. And heck, for even retirees, right? I mean, for folks who have even taken early retirement at 55 or 60 or whatever, to say, I would love to go actually be a ski patroller now, right? We need to make that proposition very attractive. And so here at National, the team and I thought about this. And so we look at it as we're kind of the top of the funnel. And at the top of the funnel is where, we want to get that excitement, that freshness, that modernization. And look, it's not so easy to do with an organization that's 85 years old, right? We have this incredible legacy, this incredible history. And the challenge is, how do you take that incredible legacy and history and you put a little shine on it and you reintroduce it, right, to people in the public so that they want to be part of it? And so when I joined National Ski Patrol almost 4 years ago, that was part of what I saw, which was a great opportunity to take this amazing organization full of passionate people and reintroduce it to the world. And one way that we've done that now is to create a whole slew of new ambassadors for the organization. And I liken this to, do you remember the Old Spice ads? I'm a marketing geek, and I love case studies in sort of business and marketing and brand. And Old Spice was formed in 1938, the same time as National Ski Patrol. And for the longest time, Old Spice was known as Old Spice. It was like your grandfather's aftershave, right? And what they did, though, coming up to the Super Bowl, I think it was like 2010, is they realized they were losing some market share to Axe body spray. And Axe body spray is that awful spray that if you walk into any high school now, every young boy has it. And what they did was reintroduce themselves. They poked fun at themselves I think it was the 2010 Super Bowl, and they created this whole new brand, fresh and young and everything else, and it went viral, right? And so I saw that, and I was like, well, if a brand like Old Spice can turn around and reinvigorate itself and reintroduce itself, then surely we can at National Ski Patrol, right? So we created our athlete ambassador program and in light of the Old Spice inspiration, and we recruited a whole bunch of young athletic ski patrollers who do big mountain competitions and mountain bike competitions, and they also patrol, and they're also excel right in school and everything else. And we had an application period where they applied, and we said, okay, we're going to support you all in your competitions so long as you go out and you talk about what ski patrol means to you and recruit other people. And we've been trying this for the past year and a half with great success. So we're really excited. We have, I think, 8 now brand ambassadors for National Ski Patrol, and they are out there talking about what it means to be a patroller, and also showing up at their comps and wearing all the Ski Patrol, swag that we give them, and signing people up who want to be candidates for National Ski Patrol.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm glad that it's successful. When I started thinking about this episode, at the beginning of the season, and looking at my local ski patrol and looking at the demographics, it's one of the things that just calls out loudly in terms of needing some help, right? And I guess as you talk about these brand ambassadors, I'm thinking of a friend's daughter who's at University of Vermont and is at EMT, right? So she's already has the medical training and sort of emergency response, and she was a ski racer. So you think she's got all the requirements, at least the raw ingredients to put together to make it. I don't know that the ski patrol necessarily speaks to her or is speaking to her, and people like her.
Well, that's the whole point of the athlete ambassador program, right? Is so that she can see people, right, that look like her or have a path like her that say, "Oh, I can do that. I can be a patroller." That's what also patrolling looks like now to me, right?
Right.
And the challenge is just getting more and more of those young people engaged, because yes, you and females, right? Because females want to see other females doing that hard work. I'm going to say this, it is really difficult, hard work. It is not for the masses, right? The training is a commitment. The environment is ever changing and difficult. And the refreshing. And so it's not for the faint of heart. And just because you might have a medical background doesn't mean that you're necessarily made to show up, right, in boots and cold environments and high stakes, really high stakes situations that are hugely stressful too. So yes, you look at the population and then you start to whittle it down of like who can meet those needs, and it kind of becomes a self-selecting process.
Right. You talked about, it's not for the faint of heart. So what does patrol training really, demand? You talked about the time commitment. You just introduced the fact that you're doing this in a cold, oftentimes miserable conditions, potentially.
Yeah.
But not sunny Colorado, sunny and dry Colorado, but
the desert.
Yeah. Like what does training look like in terms of those 140 plus hours that you mentioned earlier?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just the medical training, right? And a lot of that is on. Okay, so it's kind of hybrid, if we use words like that. So they will have to do some online book training. Mm-hmm. So they have to do a lot of reading, a lot of testing online, and then they have to go do what's called skills training. So then they actually have to show up, and they have to demonstrate that they know those medical skills to an instructor, and then pass the test to do that. But it doesn't just stop there. So let's just say they do all the online training, then they show up, they do all the skills training, they pass their OEC. Now they have to do the ski training, right? So they have to do some alpine ski training to be an alpine patroller, right? Or if they want to be a backcountry Nordic patroller, which we have a lot of, then they have to do that course and that training. And depending on the ski area, right, then they have to do toboggan training. And that could be, all right, run this toboggan, down this double black bump run. Right. And do it in the right way so you don't eject your patient. That's high stakes. Yep. That's high stakes. So again, even the avalanche training, even our level 1 avalanche training, go out in the cold and dig snow pits and work with your beacon and try, you're standing out there in very, very cold, very, very, austere environments, really trying to work through all your learning. And then you have to get tested on it. And sometimes it's not a very friendly situation, right? Because, you have to be very responsive so that when you're finally on the mountain and you are patrolling on the mountain, it's second nature. Right? Because you don't have time to think about, okay, how do I get this person out of a tree well, and how do we get them backboarded, and oh, it has to be second nature. So yes, there is a lot of training involved.
Is part of that training, I imagine role playing or scenarios in terms of this is the scenario, solve it.
100%. Yes. And you don't know what scenario you're going to get. Right. So every instructor might throw out one scenario here and another scenario there, and they have to be ready to respond to those scenarios. And we even have within this something called the senior program. So patrollers start to level up all their training, and they become, a senior, which is like a master's degree in patrolling, right? And then after that, we have a small cadre of patrollers who are the elite, so to speak. They become certified, and that's like the PhD in patrolling. And don't even ask me all the training that they do, because it's immense. And I think it takes almost 3 years to go through all of those scenarios to become a certified patroller. But they are our best, and they tend to be a lot of our instructors as well.
Obviously 3 years just to get through the training. It does seem, at least on the volunteer side, that the retention is significant. People are there for a very long time. There's some camaraderie, community, there's something that, draws them in and keeps them there. Can you speak to that culture that is, I guess why people stick around for so long?
I think we just did a member survey, and in our member survey, 2 things came out. The average stay of a patroller is 20 years. It's a long time. Any company or business or nonprofit would be like, wow, how do we keep people for 20 years? That's amazing. So that lifetime value is huge. That means people are also staying way beyond 20 years, right? We give out a lot of awards for those folks who have been in for 50 years. So average stay is 20 years. So that's wonderful. That means we have a lot of institutional knowledge and wisdom. But what our surveys always ferret out is that people join patrol because they love to ski, snowboard, ride, mountain bike, all that stuff, right? They're just outdoors adventure people who love those activities. And so that's what attracts people initially. But then what keeps them in for that period of time is because those patrols, those patrol rooms, those huts, those aid rooms, all of that becomes community, which becomes family. And that is their family. And then they end up having meals and dinners and shared experiences, right? And that creates this whole community of resilience too. So, they're not just there as individuals and showing all their grit and everything else, right? They're there as a resilient community, and that is a beautiful thing that we really don't see in many other organizations.
The culture seems to run deep and strong.
It does,
and it's a nice thing to witness. What in that theme around grit, I imagine ski patrollers often, may see things that are all that nice to see, right? I mean, you're obviously responding to people in distress, and the level of distress may vary. What does the National Ski Patrol do vis-a-vis, a call it mental health or support around? I mean, if you witness someone have a heart attack and die, it's not a great thing. Or other sorts of serious and traumatic injuries. How does the NSP support people who are witnessing those difficult moments?
Yeah. It's not just about witnessing, let's say, a death, but it's also those catastrophic injuries that are so bad, right? And those difficult moments. So thankfully, our entire culture is more willing now to talk about stress awareness, mental health, mental well-being. And over the past few years, we've really made significant investments into a patroller wellness handbook. We have a lot of online support forums. and toolkits for our patrollers who are either incredibly stressed out by just the day to day, right, that we talked about, stress, high stakes environments, guest needs, pressures, all of that. Or they've seen something catastrophic, or they had to dig somebody out of a tree well, who thankfully maybe had survived, but those moments of thinking maybe they're not going to survive can really do something to your psyche, and not to even mention when there really is a death, and then that affects the entire community of patrol. So we have really invested resources into patroller wellness. We've done a number of things. We partner with an organization called Responder Alliance that does a lot of patrol level training on just being aware of those stressors and how to communicate your stresses and your needs. We've partnered with the Cody St. John Foundation to help fund patrol training on that. We created our own handbook on that. We openly now talk about it. We talk about it in our patrol director meetings now, Are you green, yellow, red today? How are you feeling? Let's check in. Just having those conversations and having language around that has been a real game changer, right? And so we're really, really proud that we've been able to do that. And I think that's part of building that resilience in the community and the culture and keeping people around, just so that they know if they experience something, they're not alone and there's tools to help them through it.
Right. And so now that you've sold everybody listening on wanting to become a ski patroller, how do people get involved? What is it through the national organization, through their local ski patrol? What is the wide end of the funnel, as you mentioned earlier?
That's the best question to end on, because that is the most important question. And for us, all things are local. So if you are skiing around a mountain in Vermont, which I was just out there, is such a beautiful place. If you're skiing in New York, in your hometown, or Wintergreen, or anywhere else, go to your local patrol hut. Go walk into the aid room. Ride a chair with the patroller. Ask them what they do. Ask them if you can shadow them. They love that. And so that's where it all starts. And they will, let you shadow them. They'll take you into the patrol hut, talk about what it means to be a patroller. They'll get you signed up as a candidate, and then off you go into the process. Most of the time, I like to say that National Ski Patrol, we are the intel inside. Not a lot of people know about us, and they really shouldn't, because you should know your local patrol. We are nationally that invisible infrastructure that helps keep those mountains open. But for the average guest, they shouldn't, nor should they need to know what National Ski Patrol really is, because we're there powering those patrollers, educating them, but all things are local. So go get involved locally. There's a lot of opportunity to either be a patroller or to be a host. A host is another opportunity, which is like a weekend course. And you can go help direct traffic and point people to the bathrooms and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities, but check in locally first.
Okay. Well, with that, I thank you very much for your time. It's been educational, and hopefully people have learned something, and obviously go out and check out their local ski patrol.
And thank a local ski patroller.
Yes, and thank a local ski patroller. What do they prefer? Cookies, or what should we drop off?
They love their snacks. Yeah. So I don't think they're particular about what kind of snacks, but snacks always win them over.
Fantastic. All right. Thank a ski patrol with a snack. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ski patrollers are part of the fabric of every mountain community, often unseen, always there when it matters. If this episode gave you a new appreciation for what they do, let a patroller know the next time you see that red jacket. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Fresh Corduroy wherever you're listening.